You know, I don't go into the deep, dark, awful, scary stuff. That's private, and it's not for the public to know about. That wasn't easy to do. So I try to give illustrations of some of his harder sides, more abusive sides, more volatile sides.
Atz Kilcher's story is one of grit, secrets, and a legacy both celebrated and scarred. From family conflicts to shocking legal battles and even hidden trauma, the journey behind Alaska, The Last Frontier, was far more turbulent than what viewers ever saw on screen. Now, Atz Kilcher himself has broken the silence, revealing the real reason behind the cancellation. So, what exactly drove the show's cancellation? And how did the truth ripple through the Kilcher family? Today, we uncover the truth behind his revelation. What was Alaska? The Last Frontier. When Alaska? The Last Frontier first premiered on the Discovery Channel in December 2011. Audiences were immediately drawn into a world that felt more like a page from American history than a modern television show. Instead of flashy drama or contrived storylines, the series followed the Kilcher family, descendants of Swiss immigrant Atz Kilcher and his wife Ruth, as they worked to survive the harsh conditions of Alaska without relying heavily on modern conveniences. It wasn't just about chopping wood or hunting caribou. It was about preserving a lifestyle that most viewers had only read about in history books. The show's premise revolved around homesteading in Homer, Alaska, where the Kilcher family managed over 600 acres of land, passed down through generations. Atz Kilcher, along with his siblings and children, became the central figures of the series. Cameras documented their daily struggles, from building cabins and preparing food for long winters to dealing with predators, extreme weather, and medical emergencies with little outside help. The series stood apart from many other Alaska reality shows because it leaned less on scripted drama and more on raw, authentic survival. Over the course of 11 seasons, the show built a loyal fan base. From 2011 to 2022, Alaska: The Last Frontier aired more than 170 episodes, drawing in millions of viewers worldwide. Audiences were fascinated not just by the Kilchers' ability to endure, but also by their family legacy. The Kilchers were already somewhat famous before the show. Atz's daughter, Jewel, had become an international music star, but The Last Frontier turned the entire family into household names. Its popularity stemmed from a blend of rugged adventure and relatable human emotion. Unlike polished reality competition shows or scripted dramas, this was about a real family facing real dangers. There were no grocery stores just down the road, no safety net when something went wrong. If a crop failed, if an animal was lost, or if someone got injured, the consequences could be severe. That raw edge made the show feel authentic, in a way few reality programs ever achieve. Another element that made the show stand out was its focus on family dynamics. While many viewers tuned in for the survival aspects, they stayed for the interactions between the Kilchers. The love, tension, rivalries, and reconciliations added a deeply human layer to the wilderness backdrop. The Kilchers weren't perfect. They argued, disagreed, and carried personal baggage. But that imperfection made them more relatable to viewers who might never set foot in Alaska. In many ways, Alaska: The Last Frontier wasn't just a survival show. It was a story of heritage, resilience, and the determination to preserve a way of life in an age when most people had forgotten what self-sufficiency truly meant. But who is the man behind Alaska? The Last Frontier? Keep watching to find out. Atz Kilcher, the man behind the homestead. At the heart of Alaska, The Last Frontier stood Atz Kilcher, a man whose presence shaped not only the direction of the show, but also the way viewers connected with the Kilcher family. Born in 1947 to Swiss immigrant parents, Yule and Ruth Kilcher, Atz grew up on the very homestead that would later become the focus of national attention. His childhood was defined by hard work, isolation, and the constant challenge of survival in a harsh Alaskan environment. These experiences molded him into a figure equal parts rugged pioneer and complex storyteller, a duality that would become clear both on and off screen. Atz's role on the show was multifaceted. He wasn't just another cast member, he was the patriarch, the voice of experience, and often the narrator guiding audiences through the struggles of life on the homestead. Viewers saw him as both a mentor to his children and grandchildren, and a symbol of the Kilcher family's enduring resilience. Whether he was tending livestock, repairing tools, or teaching survival techniques, Atz's knowledge came across as authentic and deeply rooted in decades of first-hand experience. But Atz's life was not confined to the boundaries of the homestead. Before the cameras ever arrived, he had lived through extraordinary experiences that left a profound impact on his character. He served in the Vietnam War, a chapter of his life that haunted him for decades. Like many veterans, Atz carried the scars of combat in the form of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, which influenced both his personal struggles and his relationships with his children. The weight of that trauma contributed to periods of alcoholism and emotional volatility, subjects he would later address publicly, and with a surprising level of candor. Alongside his survivalist persona, Atz also nurtured an artistic side. He became known as a singer-songwriter, producing music that reflected his experiences in Alaska, his time in Vietnam, and the complicated journey of family life. His daughter Jewel, who achieved international fame as a folk and pop artist in the 1990s, often credited both the hardships and the creativity of her upbringing for shaping her career. While their relationship was strained for many years due to Atz's past struggles with abuse and addiction, both father and daughter eventually found reconciliation. Their story of healing added a deeper layer of humanity to the man viewers thought they already knew. On Alaska, the last frontier, Atz's presence was magnetic because it wasn't polished or idealized. He came across as weathered but wise, flawed but striving. His anecdotes often carried lessons about resilience, consequences, and the need to adapt. In many episodes, he served as a bridge between the old ways of homesteading practiced by his parents and the modern challenges his children faced as they sought to balance tradition with the demands of contemporary life. What truly set Atz apart, however, was his willingness to let viewers see both his strength and his vulnerability. Unlike many reality television figures who hide their imperfections, Atz acknowledged his mistakes, admitted his shortcomings, and spoke openly about his journey towards sobriety and healing. That honesty made him relatable, even when his past actions drew criticism. In the end, Atz Kilcher was more than the face of a reality show. He was a living embodiment of the Kilcher family's legacy, at once rugged, creative, troubled, and redemptive. His story gave Alaska, the last frontier, its emotional core, reminding audiences that survival is not only about battling the elements, but also about confronting the inner struggles that shape who we are. But how much of Atz's strength was born from pain? And what untold battles shaped the man viewers thought they knew? Stay with us. Health issues and mental struggles. Behind Atz Kilcher's rugged homesteading image on Alaska, the last frontier lay a history of physical and emotional battles that shaped his personality and often spilled into his family life. To many viewers, he appeared as the wise, weathered patriarch who had mastered survival in Alaska's unforgiving climate. Yet beneath that persona, Atz carried deep scars from his past. Scars that came from war, isolation, and the heavy toll of unresolved trauma. One of the most significant struggles Atz faced was post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Having served in the Vietnam War as a young man, Atz returned to Alaska carrying experiences that haunted him for decades. Like many veterans, he struggled with flashbacks, mood swings, and difficulty adjusting to everyday life. At a time when PTSD was not widely discussed or treated with the sensitivity it is today, Atz coped in ways that often worsened the problem. He turned to alcohol as a means of self-medicating, a choice that deepened his struggles and strained his family relationships. These battles with addiction and trauma left visible marks on his children. His daughter Jewel, who would later become a world-famous singer-songwriter, has spoken openly about growing up in an environment clouded by emotional volatility and physical abuse. In interviews, she explained how her father's unresolved pain translated into harsh treatment at home, and how she left at age 15 to live independently. For years, this fractured their relationship and created a painful legacy within the Kilcher family. Physically, Atz has also faced the wear and tear of living in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Homesteading life is demanding. Building cabins, managing livestock, and surviving brutal winters all take a toll on the body. Decades of such labor, compounded by aging, left Atz with chronic aches, reduced mobility, and health concerns that could not always be easily addressed while living far from modern medical facilities. On the show, moments of fatigue, injury, or visible strain were reminders that even the toughest survivalists are not invincible. Yet, perhaps the most striking part of Atz's story is not just his struggles, but the fact that he eventually confronted them. In his later years, he sought sobriety, therapy, and healing. Jewel has described how her father did the inner work necessary to change, eventually mending their relationship and becoming more open about his mistakes. His willingness to admit his failings publicly, particularly in interviews and his memoir, offered a rare level of honesty for a reality TV figure. In many ways, Atz's health and mental struggles added depth to Alaska, the last frontier. They reminded audiences that survival is not only about battling blizzards and predators, it's also about facing the storms within. For Atz, the fight for resilience wasn't just against the Alaskan wilderness, but against the lingering shadows of his own past. Family conflicts and internal tension. For many viewers, Alaska: The Last Frontier was a window into the beauty of Alaska and the strength of a pioneering family. But beneath the surface of survival and self-sufficiency, the Kilchers dealt with tensions that were often just as harsh as the weather outside. Internal conflicts between generations, between siblings, and even within marriages played a quiet yet powerful role in shaping the family's story and, at times, the direction of the show. The Kilcher homestead was never just one household. It was a collection of personalities and approaches to life, inherited from Yule and Ruth Kilcher, who had raised their 8 children in an environment of strict independence. Each of those children grew into adults with their own views about how to preserve or adapt the homestead. Atz, as one of the older siblings and the most visible figure on the show, often found himself at the center of these disputes. Tensions with his siblings were particularly notable. Atz Kilcher, Atz's younger brother, played a huge role on the show as the family mechanic and problem solver. Attz's approach to challenges, practical, inventive, sometimes hot-tempered, often clashed with Atz's more reflective but equally stubborn personality. Their differences weren't just about fixing a broken tractor or managing livestock. They reflected deeper questions of leadership and legacy. Who should guide the family through the pressures of both homesteading and television fame. These questions sometimes erupted into visible disagreements, giving viewers a glimpse into real sibling rivalry forged over decades of shared hardship. The dynamic extended beyond Otto. Other Kilcher siblings, such as Elma, Wertilla, and Katkin, largely stayed away from the spotlight. Some valued privacy and were wary of television cameras intruding on their lives. This created a divide between the Kilchers, who embraced the show as a way to share their story, and those who saw it as a disruption to the family's long-held traditions. Atz, being so central to the series, sometimes bore the brunt of criticism from relatives who felt the Kilcher name was being commercialized. Conflicts weren't limited to siblings. Within Atz's own household, different generations also butted heads. His son Atz Lee, for example, returned to the homestead after years away, bringing with him his own ideas about balancing tradition with modern convenience. Atz Lee's desire for independence and innovation sometimes clashed with his father's more rigid views on how things should be done. Meanwhile, younger Kilchers like Evin and Eve found themselves trying to honor the legacy of Yule and Ruth, while still carving out a sustainable path forward, blending homesteading with modern family life. Even within marriages, tension simmered. Jane Kilcher, Atz Lee's wife, often expressed the difficulty of living in such an isolated environment, particularly when it came to raising children. Her candor resonated with viewers, but also revealed the pressures that came with maintaining a family in conditions most people would find overwhelming. The push and pull between preserving heritage and seeking comfort or compromise added another layer of conflict to the Kilcher story. What made these conflicts compelling wasn't that they were unique. Families everywhere argue and disagree. What made them fascinating was the backdrop. In Alaska, survival demanded cooperation, yet personal differences often threatened that very unity. The Kilchers had to balance their private grievances with the shared responsibility of keeping the homestead alive and managing the public demands of a hit television series. Ultimately, the internal tensions among Atz, his siblings, and his children revealed that survival isn't just about enduring snowstorms or hunting moose. It's also about navigating clashing egos, old wounds, and competing visions for the future. These conflicts, while sometimes hidden behind the narrative of unity, were an undeniable part of what made Alaska the last frontier, both authentic and, at times, fragile. But what happens when survival itself collides with tragedy? And can even the strongest Kilcher withstand such a test? Stay tuned. Atz Lee's accident. In 2015, Alaska. The last frontier was shaken to its core when Atz Lee Kilcher, one of the most adventurous members of the family, suffered a life-threatening accident. While on a hiking trip in Homer, Alaska, Atz Lee fell from a steep cliff, plummeting more than 40 feet onto solid rock. The fall left him with multiple broken ribs, a fractured hip, a collapsed lung, and several other serious injuries that required immediate medical attention and extensive surgery. The incident stunned both the Kilcher family and the show's loyal fan base, as Atz Lee had always been portrayed as strong, fearless, and resourceful, qualities essential to surviving in Alaska's unforgiving wilderness. The accident didn't just change Atz Lee's personal life. It created shockwaves through the production of the series. With one of the central cast members out of action for months, filming schedules had to be completely restructured. Atz Lee's usual role, hunting, building, and taking on physically demanding tasks, was suddenly unavailable. Producers had to shift the narrative focus onto other family members, particularly Atz Sr., Otto, and Eve, to maintain the balance of survival stories that fans expected. This unplanned change added financial strain, as production costs rose due to delays, reshoots, and additional safety measures demanded by the network. The ripple effects extended beyond logistics and finances. Within the Kilcher family, Atz Lee's accident reignited long-standing tensions about the dangers of homesteading and whether the constant push for self-sufficiency was worth the risks. Atz Sr., while deeply shaken by his son's injuries, was torn between pride in his family's resilience and guilt that such an accident had happened under the banner of their legacy. Otto, more practical and outspoken, questioned whether the show itself was encouraging dangerous behavior by pushing the family to take risks for the camera. For Atz Lee, the recovery process was grueling, both physically and emotionally. He was forced to step back from the rugged lifestyle he loved, relying heavily on his wife Jane and other family members. Fans watched as he appeared on the show with visible limitations, sparking conversations about vulnerability and the human cost of survival in such extreme conditions. While his return was celebrated, the accident left a lingering shadow, reminding viewers and the Kilchers themselves that one misstep in Alaska could mean disaster. Ultimately, Atz Lee's accident highlighted the fragility of life on the frontier and exposed fault lines within the family. It became a defining moment in the show's history, underscoring both the authenticity of the dangers they faced and the heavy toll those dangers exacted on the people behind the story. Atz Lee's divorce and personal drama. While survival in the Alaskan wilderness was at the heart of Alaska, the last frontier, it was the Kilchers' personal lives that often fueled the show's most compelling storylines. Among the most talked about was the rocky relationship between Atz Lee Kilcher and his wife, Jane. From the very beginning, their partnership stood out because Jane wasn't born into the Kilcher homestead tradition. Raised in Homer, she had a background in commercial fishing and brought a practical toughness to the marriage. Yet, living full-time on the homestead came with challenges that strained even the strongest bonds. Atz Lee and Jane's relationship was marked by visible ups and downs. On screen, they shared moments of teamwork, hunting together, building projects, and raising their children. But off-screen, their marriage was often under intense pressure. Fans began speculating about cracks in their union as early as the mid-2010s, when Jane publicly expressed her frustrations about life on the homestead, the spotlight of reality television, and Atz Lee's sometimes reckless nature. By the late 20s, rumors of separation grew louder, culminating in confirmation that the two had divorced. The divorce was more than just a personal turning point for Atz Lee. It also had ripple effects on the dynamics of the show. For years, Jane had been a central part of Alaska. The last frontier, not only as Atz Lee's partner, but also as one of the family's most outspoken and relatable voices. She provided balance to Atz Lee's adventurous spirit, often voicing concerns that resonated with viewers who questioned the risks the Kilchers took. With their relationship fractured, the show lost some of that natural tension and chemistry that had made them a fan-favorite couple. Beyond the impact on screen, the separation highlighted deeper struggles in Atz Lee's personal life. The weight of his near-fatal accident in 2015 had left him with physical limitations and emotional scars, and the pressure of being constantly filmed only compounded those struggles. Rumors circulated about substance use and emotional volatility, though never confirmed outright, and fans sensed that Atz Lee was carrying a burden much heavier than his role as a survivalist on TV. Divorce, in this context, became not just about a failed marriage, but about the collision between private hardship and public exposure. For Discovery and the production team, the divorce posed a dilemma. Reality shows thrive on personal drama, but Alaska, the last frontier, was always marketed as a story of resilience, family unity, and survival against the odds. Highlighting a painful split risked damaging that narrative. As a result, the issue was addressed only sparingly on the show, leaving many details to play out in fan speculation and online forums. Behind the scenes, however, the fracture added to growing concerns about whether the Kilcher family's personal struggles were beginning to overshadow the homestead's survival story. Ultimately, Atz Lee's divorce symbolized a larger truth about the Kilchers. Life in Alaska was hard enough without the added weight of cameras and fame. His personal drama underscored how the pressures of survival, family expectations, and public scrutinies could break even the most resilient bonds. For the show, it was another reminder that while the frontier could test their physical endurance, it was the emotional toll that often proved the hardest to survive. But did one broken bond expose deeper shadows in the Kilcher story? Stay tuned. The next twist may change everything. Allegations of abuse and trauma. For all its focus on survival in the wilderness, Alaska, the last frontier could not escape the shadows of the Kilcher family's past. One of the most unsettling chapters in their story came to light when allegations of abuse involving Atz Kilcher resurfaced, sparking difficult conversations both inside and outside the family. These revelations, amplified by media coverage, placed the show in an uncomfortable spotlight and raised questions about how much of the Kilchers' private pain should be part of their public legacy. Much of the controversy erupted when Jewel, Atz's daughter and singer-songwriter, revealed in interviews and her memoir the emotional and physical abuse she endured as a child. Outlets like People and MEL magazine amplified her claims, sparking debates. Atz himself did not deny the past. In fact, in his own memoir and public statements, he admitted to being abusive during his younger years. He attributed much of this behavior to his own traumatic upbringing, the isolation of the homestead, and struggles with alcohol. Atz framed his later years as a story of change and redemption, emphasizing therapy, sobriety, and self-reflection as turning points. While some fans admired his honesty, others found the revelations too disturbing to overlook. For a show built around themes of family resilience and tradition, the idea that its central figure had once caused deep pain to his children was jarring. The impact on the show was undeniable. Viewers who once tuned in for the rugged romance of frontier life began questioning the authenticity of the Kilcher family's narrative. Discovery, too, faced quiet pressure to navigate the situation carefully. While the allegations weren't the direct focus of the program, the growing public awareness made it harder for producers to keep the emphasis solely on survival and homesteading. Behind the scenes, executives had to weigh whether continuing to center Atz as the face of the Kilcher legacy was sustainable in light of reputational concerns. Ultimately, the allegations didn't just tarnish Atz's image. They shifted the way audiences perceived the show. What once looked like a wholesome story of resilience became more complicated. A portrait of survival that included not only harsh winters, but also generational trauma. This tension between public admiration and private pain may have been one more reason why the series, despite its popularity, began to lose its footing with both viewers and the network. Rumors, legal issues, and other shocking revelations. Even though Alaska, the last frontier, celebrated the Kilchers' resilience and respect for the land, the family was not without controversy. Over the years, legal troubles and swirling rumors complicated their image, threatening both the family's reputation and the show's long-term stability. The most prominent case came in 2015, when Atz Lee and his wife Jane were charged for illegally using a helicopter during a bear hunting trip. Under Alaskan law, Using aircraft to locate or transport hunters is considered a serious violation, since it undermines fair chase hunting practices. The charges made headlines across the state and beyond, painting the Kilchers in a light far removed from the wholesome survivalists portrayed on television. Ultimately, Atz Lee and Jane reached a settlement with authorities, which included paying a $17,500 legal fine. For the Kilchers, who lived off the land, this was no small sum. For Discovery and the show, it was a financial and reputational headache, raising questions about whether the family's traditional lifestyle was being compromised for television. Beyond the helicopter case, the Kilchers faced ongoing speculation about other possible legal gray areas. Viewers and local Alaskans raised concerns about how filming sometimes intersected with strict wilderness regulations. Allegations surfaced, though never fully confirmed, about improper use of equipment, encroachments into restricted areas, or pushing the boundaries of what could legally be filmed. These stories, often circulated online, fueled heated debates in fan communities. Even unverified, they planted doubts about how authentic the family's portrayal really was. Financially, the fines and legal fees created strain, but the bigger cost was reputational. The Kilchers had built their brand around authenticity, respect for tradition, and playing by nature's unforgiving rules. The idea that they may have bent state hunting laws cut directly against that image. Discovery executives, aware of how damaging negative publicity could be for a long-running franchise, reportedly pushed the family to keep future storylines focused on day-to-day homesteading rather than activities that could attract legal scrutiny. At the same time, rumors about feuds, separations, and other personal scandals continued to swirl. Some were baseless gossip, others contained threads of truth, but all blurred the line between the show's survival narrative and off-screen drama. For audiences who wanted to believe in the Kilcher legacy, this mix of fines, rumors, and controversies made it harder to separate fact from fiction. By the later seasons, the shadow of legal trouble lingered. Even when the family worked together to hunt, farm, or build, there was an unspoken reminder that their struggles weren't just with the Alaskan wilderness. They were also with laws, fines, and public perception. In the end, these pressures added yet another weight on a show already strained by accidents, health issues, and family conflict. So, were the Kilchers battling nature, or something far more destructive within their own walls? Keep watching to uncover the truth. Why they canceled Alaska. The Last Frontier. The end of Alaska. The Last Frontier was not sudden, but it was painful. Over the years, several factors quietly stacked up until the show could no longer continue. Health struggles were the first and perhaps most obvious. Atz Kilcher and other family members endured injuries and medical scares, some while performing demanding tasks for the cameras. The pressure to keep pushing their bodies in harsh conditions eventually became unsustainable. Legal challenges added another layer of stress. Disputes over land usage, filming permissions, and environmental regulations led to lawsuits and financial penalties. Reports suggest the Kilchers had to pay tens of thousands of dollars in fines, which not only strained their finances but also soured their relationship with the network. What had started as a simple portrayal of frontier life was increasingly weighed down by lawyers, contracts, and courtroom drama. Family trauma also loomed large. The Kilchers' personal struggles, long-buried conflicts, stories of past abuse, and ongoing tension between relatives became more difficult to conceal as the cameras stayed rolling. What fans saw as raw honesty often felt to the family like reopening old wounds in front of millions. Atz has since admitted that constantly balancing entertainment with deeply personal struggles wore him down emotionally. The network itself played its role. Discovery never offered a detailed explanation for the cancellation, instead issuing a carefully worded statement about the show reaching a natural conclusion. For fans who had followed the Kilchers for over a decade, that explanation rang hollow. Many were left questioning whether the decision was financial, creative, or simply the product of accumulated strain. For Atz, the end marked both relief and loss. The show brought global recognition to the Kilcher name and preserved their legacy on film, but it also magnified pain and pressured the family to perform, rather than just live. For viewers, the cancellation felt like the closing of a window into a world of grit and resilience. The takeaway? That reality television often shows only half the truth. Fame brings visibility, but also magnifies pain. For the Kilchers, stepping away may be the hardest yet healthiest survival decision they've ever made. So, what do you think truly ended Alaska? The last frontier, family conflict, legal troubles, or hidden struggles behind the cameras? We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more.